Hello, gathered friends. I'm Horror Nuva, and today on BIONICLE Deep Dive, I want to explore a theory that I've been cooking up for a while now about how I think the Turaga on Motunui were secretly trying to determine if any of their Matoran were destined to become Toa, who they picked, and why. So, the Turaga must have known that it was possible for some of the Matoran in their villages were destined to become Toa. After all, they themselves were Matoran who were called on by destiny. If it could happen to them, it could happen again. Now, for the most part, they seem to have put their faith in the prophecy of the Toamata's arrival. But it would make sense for them to also have a contingency plan in place in case things became dire and they needed Toa, which is part of why they hid the Toa stones on the island in the first place. And since they were thrust into the life of heroes with no warning or training, they would have wanted to make sure their picks already had at least a little bit of training and lessons and responsibility. So the Draga had a very vested interest, not only in finding who among their villages were Toa, but also training and preparing them as best they could, without letting them know, of course. In the 2008 serial Brothers in Arms, it's revealed that Matoran who are destined are sometimes odd or eccentric for their type. Quote, almost like their brains know something it isn't telling them, unquote. Meaning that it's sometimes possible to tell if a Matoran is destined beforehand. In that case, I think that Turaga would have been keeping a keen eye on any Matoran that they thought might have fit that description. Plus, they also understand that the questions of who is destined to become a Toa is very up in the air. After all, they know that there was legitimate question to whether or not they were destined to become Toa. After all, the prophecies for them were somewhat inconsistent. Of course, it's revealed that that was on purpose by Motunui. Motunui purposefully framed the prophecies in the stars, just that it would look like other Matoran were destined, in order to manipulate Makuta into getting his real picks, the Toametru. So they in turn would be trying their best to find the villagers they think would make the best Toa, and I believe they made a system for giving them extra attention and responsibility. On the island of Motunui, two Matoran from each village were designated as their Turaga's right and left hand. These Matorans were often the best and most reliable in the village, particularly the right hands, and were often given extra responsibilities, even running the villages when the Turaga were away. In pretty much every case, the right-left hand duo was a responsible, strong leader personality and an eccentric yet brave oddball, both qualities that fit what people look for in a future Toa. My theory is that their left and right hands, as well as the Koli champions, most of whom were also left and right hands, were each of their Turaga's best guesses for who were destined to become Toa. The strongest evidence for this being that so many of them actually did become Toa. Of the 6 Toa in Ika, 4 of them, Jalar, Kongu, Huki, and Matoro, were all their Turaga's right hand, and those 4, as well as Holly, were on their village's Koli team. Takua, who later became the Toa of Light, was also on Takoro's Koli team. Now, there are especially strong hints that the Turaga believed Takua was destined to become a Toa. Several times throughout the Motunui online game, after saving a village, the Turaga would compare Takua to the Toa, starting with Nokama and ending with Vakama. I like to think that this game is a bit of a shock to them, particularly Vakama. I mean, after all, Takua was a goofy wanderer who was temporarily banished from Takoro from being so irresponsible. Not someone you'd peg as a hero. But then, when he found the Toa Stones and he helped save village after village, the Turaga all came around. God, imagine the conversation they must have had about it. Takua saves the Gamatoran from being trapped underwater. I believe this one might be a Toa. No, no way. He's way too irresponsible. It must be someone like Jalar, or maybe Kapura. Takua ends a plague in Pokoro. Is this the kid you were talking about, Nokama? Oh yeah, he's got the makings of a Toa. Absolutely not! Takua brings together Matoran from every village and successfully defends the Kininui while the Toa are fighting Makuta. Turaga Nuju says, Fine, fine, I give up. He's a Toa. He's a freaking Toa. Oh, Mata Nui, protect us all. Getting back to the Koli tournament, we know that the Turaga themselves believed that the tournament was significant to Destiny, particularly Holly's inclusion. Nokama selected Holly over Kotu, her actual left hand, after looking into the waters and seeing Holly's face. Additionally, Holly going to the championship and then later uniting the island seems to have been both prophesized by the seers in Kokoro's sanctum, Nuju even stating that Holly's victory was necessary for the island's survival. So yeah, there definitely was a lot of Destiny shenanigans going into the tournament. The Turaga knew this wasn't just a game of sports ball. It especially makes sense that the Koli tournament was a means to train potential Toa, when considering how immensely spiritual the Koli training was. Each village's techniques were rooted in the study and understanding of their principles, which were derived from the three virtues that all Matoran honor. They weren't just training their bodies, they were also learning moral lessons about courage and faith and willpower, lessons that would be very important for Toa to know. On Tumblr, a mutual of mine named Crystal Toa started a conversation about this over on that site and pointed out the similarity between some of the Koli training exercises and the exercises Lee Khan gave the captured Toa Metru as a means to teach them lessons in willpower and responsibility needed to use their masks. If these kinds of exercises can subtly give a Toa what they need to know how to use a mask, it makes sense that they would use them for their champions. Now, perhaps the biggest hole in this theory is Nuparu, the Toa Inika of Earth, and the only member of that team who was neither a Turaga's hand nor a Koli champion. All the others fit this theory perfectly. Now, from an out-of-story perspective, we do know why this is. Greg Farsty actually personally made the decision to have Nuparu be a member of the new team, over Onipu or Tepu, the other prominent Onu Matoran who were both the Turaga's hands and the Koli champions for Onukoro. Greg's reasoning was that Nuparu would be a more interesting character, both individually and in regards to the team dynamic. And I have to agree, Nuparu being an inventor added way more than just having another Matoran military commander like Onipu, who we already had two of those with Jaller and Kongu. We never really had an engineer Toa before, and both his skills and inventor's curiosity made Nuparu a valuable and lovable addition to the Anika, both in story and to the audience. Now, the in-story explanation of this could honestly be Whenua just got it wrong. Destiny is a funny thing. And at the end, the Turaga made the best guesses they could. They couldn't have possibly known any of these things for certain. Nakama swapping out Kotu for Holly shows that the Turaga can change their mind. In fact, the only instances of the Turaga swapping somebody else in for their Koli team other than their right and left hand was the case when that person turned out to be a Toa, which, if you ask me, is pretty good evidence that this whole thing was searching for Toa. Who knows? Maybe Whenua was a little bit biased against Nuparu for inventing cops in his past life. And maybe Onipu or Taipu were destined to become Toa later down the line, after the story ended. I mean, they certainly had the bravery and the quirkiness to qualify. But that's my theory on how the Turaga used both the right and left hand roles, as well as the Koli tournament, as a way to find and train potential future Toa. What do you guys think? Do you like this theory, or do you have other ideas about what was happening? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, my gathered friends.